Did you want to go to Reason Rally 2016 on June 4th and can't afford it? Do you want your group to be a part of the biggest atheist and free thought rally in 2016? Now's your chance. Reason Rally 2016 is looking for groups that want to come to the Reason Rally for a great rate. Reason Rally is working with rallybus.net, your online crowdsourced event bus sharing, to bring you to the Reason Rally and to take you home. Go to rallybus.net/reason-rally and sign up today. We need bus captains and organizers to set up groups of 40 or more that can meet up in major cities and ride share. Go to rallybus.net/reason-rally to set yours up today.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Havoc and Chaos Live. Weekly look at some of the batshittery we call news and the pals, pundits, and other off-the-wall people, myself included, who claim to know what is really going on in our world. I'm an atheist, a lesbian, and I have bipolar disorder, among other things. Therefore, hate of any kind is not welcome in my world. I am opinionated, and my impulse control went by the wayside months ago, so I say what I feel. In other words, stupid, smart people piss me the fuck off. Be forewarned, I'm highly excitable, and if you are easily offended by four-letter words or longer, you may want to go and listen to something else. I really need a new intro. I will take suggestions. Thank you. Please do check out the external URLs. The background stories and the science behind this little segment is overwhelming. So last week we kind of dibbled and dabbled around the edges of Jim Humble's Genesis 2 church. This week we're gonna dive in headfirst. I want you to see how dangerous these people are. I want you to see that these believers are talking about ingesting as well as giving enemas of a known dangerous chemical or chemicals to their autistic children. What's even more horrendous, twat waffles like Bishop Carrie Rivera suggests a protocol of shoving it up your autistic child's ass to allegedly cure him of autism. Others, as I mentioned last week, such as Andre Skelker, also push this crank as well. Now, before we begin, I want to make a couple points very clear from the outset. One, I'm only speaking about MMS, at least for the moment. There is MMS2, which is also peddled by G2C, as well as GCMAF, which is a GC protein-derived macrophage activating factor. It's basically an unlicensed blood product, which is now touted by Carrie Rivera, among others. The recently deceased Jeff Bradstreet being the most infamous. Then there's stem cell therapy, and regretfully, now turpentine. Yes, the shit you buy at the hardware store to thin paint. Some of the MS kooks are now advocating that as a treatment. These are but a few of the bogus cures being bandied about. There's chelation therapy, which leaches heavy metals from the blood, and that's based on the flawed idea that mercury, or thimerosal, causes autism. There's HBOT, or hyperbaric pressurization, and then the so-called Lupron protocol. Basically, it's chemical castration. Those are a few. And just an FYI, GCMAF is a topic unto itself, as are all these, and one I might tackle sometime in the near future. Point 2. Although MMS is touted as a cure-all for every disease known to man, and that's via a statement attributed to Jim Humble, my focus is only on its use as a cure for autism. I will specifically be looking at Carrie Rivera, as she is the main proponent with claims stating her protocol is responsible for 214 children cured. She's a past headline speaker for Autism One, which some call the Crankfest, and she advocates through her book and lectures for MMS use. Point 3. I could give two flying fucks what this church believes. Keep it in the privacy of your own home with consenting adults. You could fuck a tree for all I care. Go off the grid and shit in the woods. But the second you hatch a little one, all bets are off. Just as I and many others have issues with faith healing, you bet your sweet ass I'm not going to say nice things about your little cult. There is no peer-reviewed scientific evidence to support your stance. Regardless of whether your so-called cult leader is, quote,
very, very sorry that no scientist or no scientific laboratory has ever written up or signed a scientific paper stating that MMS is not bleach.
Sorry, dude, science trumps your logic every time. And finally, some of the science I have touched on, I'm not going to rehash it. To blatantly ignore governmental warnings, secretively hide the use from authorities, or even a spouse, tells me all I need to know. You know this crap is shit. Yet, in your delusions, you have chosen to ignore the science, whether it's for profit or to alleviate your guilt. And I'm not so nice as other people to believe that you are some sheep led astray, or that you are being exploited. I'm not talking about fence sitters. I'm talking about people who actively promote the use of this stuff on the various forums and message groups that I'm a member of. Your child is not injured. Your child is not damaged. So stop parroting Jenny McCarthy, because that is all you are doing. Having autism is not the end of the world, nor is it a holocaust. It's this last point I want to focus on at the moment before delving into the whole cult line thing. There's two thoughts that abound in this seedy cult, and they loosely fall within the parameters of a child being injured or damaged. It goes something like this.
You, the parent, do not love your child. If you did, you would do anything to cure your child.
The second being that the notion that death is better than having an autistic child. It's the denial that autism spectrum disorder is a lifelong disorder with peaks and valleys, attributing any success in the growth and maturity of said children is due to this so-called miracle cure. What people forget is that with therapy and age, these kids can learn better behavior and communication. Shoving a bleaching agent up their ass only teaches avoidance. Abuse a child long enough, and they will avoid whatever causes the abuse, by any means necessary. In a bit of irony, if that's the right word, parents who love their children will latch on to most anything that gives them hope of alleviating their children's suffering. I've seen it personally. Or the suffering they experience watching their children with whatever ailment. This mindset, this suffering, this is what charlatans like Rivera and Humble and Kelker and many others rely on to make their millions. What's truly baffling in all this? Healthcare fraud is a huge business in the U.S. I think we all know that. And parents of children with autism are often targeted. Actually, any parent with a special needs child is. Fringe treatment providers prey on this desperation, prey on this fear, and they deceive parents with numerous unfounded claims. Humble's book is full of them. So is Rivera's. The fence-sitters, or at-wits end parents, as I call them, I can sort of understand them, and I do have mixed feelings. It's the peddlers of this shit that show up in comments, or who ignore all the science when presented. Those are the ones I have specific issues with. It's one thing to have questions or to seek out answers because you're confused. It's another to deny science based on a homeopath's say-so. And that's all Carrie Rivera is. Remember, neither she nor Humble are trained in any related field. To me, this is child abuse, plain and simple. I've only briefly touched about this area concerned. I think what clinched it for me are two comments from about a year ago and why I continue to look into this MMS shit. And yes, I have actually been snipping the two photos you'll see for over a year. It's an attitude that is becoming more prevalent today, and it really pains me. I will quote from one. I am autistic, and it never ceases to amaze me how scared anti-vaxxers are of autism. How they have no idea how completely ridiculous and offensive they are being. I will never understand. They rather have dead children than have children like me, and that just makes me sad, especially since that fear has absolutely no basis and puts so many lives at risk. And this woman does go on. With both thoughts, for me, a really super important question that needs to be asked is this. Why do autistic people need to suffer so fucking outrageously before anyone notices? Carrie Rivera has been touting this shit since at least 2007. It wasn't until last year it made the news. Is it because many of them are too young or nonverbal to stand up for themselves? Hopefully, it's something I can shed light on in the next section. Quote,
If this all sounds a little cultish, that's because it is. MMS was discovered by a man named Jim Humble, a former Scientologist who started his own church, Genesis 2, of which he is now the self-styled Archbishop. The church appears to be little more than a marketing organ for his alleged miracle cure.
The article continues.
If Humble is the paterfamilias of this wolf pack of chicanery, a woman named Carrie Rivera seems to be its den mother. A bishop in Humble's church, yada yada yada.
I've had a really hard time putting together a short bio of the creator of MMS and the Genesis 2 church. It's hard to take anything this man says seriously when in 2011 he propagated a newsletter stating the FBI had a kill order for his life. And, of course, the science is so very, very flawed. He is a promulgator of some of the most out there narratives, and lacking any reference point, fact-checking him is virtually impossible. On the other hand, fact-checking some of his more ardent detractors has also proven difficult. For the sake of my sanity, there are some questionable highlights in his past that I'm going to ignore. At the time of this writing, none of it can be confirmed or denied. Links to stories have disappeared, videos have vanished, etc. That aside, my interest really is the creation of this so-called church and the dubious scientific claims made. The woo I have traveled through in putting this together has been quite interesting, to say the least. There's some examples in the show notes. I will mention this, though. In one short video clip, Humble takes on diabetes. It's something I have. I struggle with it mightily. And it's about 2 to 3 minutes, but if you watch, notice that he blames the ever-elusive pathogen, something I have mentioned in my prior segment and articles concerning Humble and MMS. This is absurd. Diabetes, as we all know, is a metabolic disorder, not one caused by an infectious agent. This is but one reason why this man's science cannot be taken seriously. He does not know what the fuck he's talking about. And that's really one issue I have surrounding Humble and his so-called church. While I don't think ingesting bleach is a really good idea, I could really give two shits what an adult does to their body. It's when they go to the extremes suggested by Carrie Rivera in her book and I hope to hide later next week, that's when I have issue. While he doesn't quite advocate, he does support her work. Now, that view may change, and be advised that my information is a bit dated, but still relevant. The more I dig, especially into Rivera, that dialogue may change. I have noticed that Humble does follow a script of sorts when he's touting MMS, and very rarely mentions Carrie Rivera's protocol. And whether this is by design, I don't know. They do, or they did, communicate, although that may have changed since Rivera has pretty much jumped ship to GCMAF, although she's still connected. But onto the church. The following is from a 2010 newsletter in which Jim Humble made a statement to the, quote, church when it was being formed. While Humble states he is spiritual but not religious and comes off as a humanitarian type in various interviews, the sole purpose is to bypass the government. In the first paragraph alone, he makes that quite clear. Quote,
"Another purpose of this church is to protect our members from vaccinations and other governmental oppression, such as forced insurance.
Further down,
the protections of a worldwide church. Governments will be a great deal less prone to bother you as a minister of health."
So he is using the notion of separation of church-state to basically, in my opinion, protect the money mill. He goes on,
"Think of what you can do when you leave here after completing the course. You can hand out tracts and approach sick people and offer to help them become well, and then they will give you a donation when they are well. In fact, you can tell them that you don't want a donation of any kind until they are well.
continuing,
The money will come in from sales, or from healing people, or just donations into my PayPal account, and I will deposit it where no one knows where it is, and it will be divided out among a number of banks across the world where there is no way to trace it."
He continues by stating again that his church exists primarily to sidestep governmental interference and power.
"This protection fund is meant for one purpose, to stand between our church members and those who would suppress them. This fund is to hire super lawyers and marchers when needed, other experts to bring suits against those who would suppress our members. This fund will be used to bring suits and class action suits against anyone who is doing things that might impact the health of people of Earth in a negative manner, or anyone who is interfering with our pastors.
Power.
Consider the power of the Catholic Church.
Ah, yes, the almighty Catholic Church.
They haven't given up their power. They pay no taxes. Their priests have been molesting women and children for hundreds of years, and the governments have never been able to stop it. That's raw power. Don't you agree?"
And finally, we have Humble's personal claim to power. He cites some religious mumbo-jumbo bullshit that just made me want to puke.
"To have the power of a small c church, we need the legitimacy of the capital C church, and that depends upon me. I was ordained into the lineage of bishops traced all the way back to Christ."
Gee, I thought the Catholic priest claimed that.
"Actually, the apostles were bishops, and they were given the power to create churches with a capital C, and other bishops by Christ," and he goes on.
In the end, in my opinion, all this is for money. All this is for power. He reminds me regretfully of Jim Jones. Humble is not the gentle, confused old man who wants to do good in the world. He is a conniving old man with a want for power and fame. He is a manipulator who has convinced desperate people to drink the Kool-Aid. Now, I get asked as a non-parent why I give a rat's ass about this issue. It's a multi-point answer, but I will say this. I want to see the snake oil salesmen like Humble and Rivera taking down a few pegs. In all honesty, they need to be put in jail, and all profits they've accumulated forfeited. All MMS or CD pushers, they're the ones making money off of telling people to abuse autistic children. They're the ones defrauding the public, spanning 63 countries at last count. So I think if enough awareness is raised, we will see people jailed and this crap pulled off the market. Being that I do have a personal stake in this, I have family, I have friends that fall on the ASD scale. That's the other part of the answer. This whole situation saddens me greatly. Instead of working to understand why children are as they are, instead of accepting them as precious beings in their own right, instead of educating ourselves, we resort to what would have been called 500-600 years ago witchcraft. And now, back to our show.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner. I'm proud to be.
What happens when you're a non-believer and find yourself in the Canadian Bible Belt? If you're like me, you gather some fellow heathens and take to the airwaves. So we invite you to take a left to the valley every Sunday at 1 p.m. on CIVL 101.7 FM. Follow us on lefttothevalley.com. Atheists, skeptics, and Eunice Radio, no God required.
I'm an atheist. Hey. Faith in God is like a virus, so why would I respect it? The line between good and evil gets blurred once infected.